Imagine the cleverest kid in your class at school came over and said, here's my maths homework and my art project, have them. That'd feel like a pretty good deal, wouldn't it? And that's what the e-tron GT is, really. Audi waited patiently for Porsche to turn in a fantastic electric saloon in the shape of the Taycan, and then they said, that looks good, we'll have one of those, thanks. Could you send it to our place and we'll make one? I don't like to assume anything on Top Gear Tested, but if this car is anything other than spectacular with that amount of talent behind it, that's going to be quite embarrassing for Audi. What is it? Yep, it's Audi's Taycan, dressed in a punchier looking body and with an Audi flavour interior. The Audi's also longer, taller and a little bit narrower, and it's supposed to be less sporty than the Porsche and more of a relaxing GT. You get 4 doors and 4.5 seats. It's all electric, all-wheel drive and all yours from about £81,000. Or £113,000 if you want the RS version with 637 brake horsepower. What does it look like? Well, judging by the quantity of admiring glances this car gets in the real world, I should say it looks pretty spectacular. Whereas the Taycan's pebble smooth and actually quite subtle, the Audi's so much more aggressive and looks really assertive on the road. It's not perfect. I'm not sure about this Doppel's not a grille piece. Looks like the car's wearing a gum shield, but that raked back with the toothy rear lights is one of the all-time genius pieces of Audi design. How big's the battery? As of right now, you can't spec a small battery version of the e-tron GT like you can with the Porsche Taycan. There's only one size, a mighty 93 kilowatt hours, of which 85 kilowatt hours is usable. And in the RS e-tron GT, you've got a claimed range of 293 miles. But this is not the RS. This is a standard e-tron GT Quattro. It looks about identical, but it costs 30 grand less than the RS and it's got a chunk less power. However, this is the only e-tron GT which the brochure claims can get beyond 300 miles on a single charge. Not in the real world though. Where's the charging port? Like the Taycan, the charging port's down here behind the front wheel. A simple push to pop open flap, and then if you can find a 270 kilowatt capable rapid charger, then a 20-minute charge will get you 80% of battery. On the home wall box though, more like 13 hours. What does it weigh? Quite a lot, I'm presuming, because this particular e-tron GT has optional rear wheel steering and optional air suspension, and Audi doesn't fit that sort of tech to cars unless it's trying to disguise a heck of a lot of weight. Now it's supposed to be 2,350 kilos, and do you know what, it's spot on. Well, 2,347, so it's bang on, give or take a couple of kilos. Interesting, isn't it? Audi's e-tron GT weighs about exactly as much as a Bentley Continental GT. Is it practical? Despite being shaped more favourably than the Taycan, the e-tron GT is not what you'd call generous on space. It's pitch black inside despite having a glass roof, and the rear boot and the front boot are nothing like as big as the ones you get in a Tesla Model S. Think of this car more as a big coupe than a big 4-door saloon, and it's a little bit easier to forgive. Oh, and the rear visibility is rubbish. Of course, if you need some space and a sense of utility, you could just go and have a Porsche Taycan Cross Turismo, or an Audi RS6. Will I get along with the tech? Actually, life in here is probably easier than in the Taycan. This screen's a bit less fiddly to operate than Porsche's. You get proper buttons for your heater instead of the Taycan's touchscreen. There's no extra controls up around the instrument binnacle, and even the gear selector is just easier to see and operate. It seems space age, but when you stop and really look at it, all of the buttons and interfaces are actually familiar from an Audi A4 or an A6. So it's not intimidating, but it still manages to feel futuristic and ultra modern in here. That is a very clever trick to have pulled off. What's the gimmick? You get these matrix headlights with laser beams built into the middle. They're so powerful, they're only allowed to activate at over 43 miles per hour. But once they do, you can see apparently 600 meters into the distance. That's twice as far as a normal headlight. As safety features go, that is a really cool one, and spot on for your traditional Audi tailgating. How fast is it? Well, it should be fast enough, even though this is merely the entry-level e-tron GT, not the RS. We've got 469 brake horsepower spread between both our axles, but when I activate the launch mode, that'll actually boost, just temporarily, up to 523 brake horsepower, and that should give us 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds. So to test that, got my GPS super accurate timing gear, and I'm going to do just what you would in the real world. Nail it in a straight line, but just once, because you only get one attempt before all your mates start to feel sick. Stick it into drive, make sure I'm in dynamic mode, just feels more appropriate somehow. Foot on the brake, timing gear is primed, and off we go. Wow, that's fast. Don't think the wet surface has held us up too much. I'm waiting for the kick. There's going to be a kick at some point as the gearbox just changes into the second ratio. No, I didn't feel it. So smooth, just never noticed it. I mean, I'm only supposed to get a 0 to 100 time, but let's see how fast we can go, shall we? 140, 145, that's 150, and I'm going to have to brake. Almost reached the top speed of the car in, well under a mile. Absolutely ballistic thing, considering that it is the base model. The Audi e-tron GT accelerated from 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds and dipped below 10 seconds to 100 miles per hour. That's rapid enough to make you question if you need the RS. And meanwhile, you're covering the quarter mile, wow, 12.65 seconds at 114.2 miles an hour. The VMAX, didn't quite get to 150. It said we did on the speedo, but in reality, it was 145 miles an hour. And I could have done that while tuning the radio or sending a text on Apple CarPlay. What's it like on a motorway? Well, it's good, but could it be better? This e-tron GT doesn't have the acoustic glass. It's not double glazed, and that's perhaps why we're getting just a little bit too much wind noise in here for my liking. Got a glass roof as well, and they always seem to drum up a little bit more road noise, but on the whole, it is pretty good out here. And again, it really should be. I mean, this thing literally has GT in the name. Since the top speed is over 150 miles an hour, we should get up into the top lane and just see what the Autobahn credentials of the e-tron GT Quattro are like. And yeah, they're predictably really solid. At this speed, just coming up to 130 miles an hour, the air suspension has lowered the car into its slipperiest setting to cut drag. Still feels super stable, but we're doing 1.3 miles per kilowatt hour. You can cruise at very high speed in an e-tron GT Quattro, but I don't think I'll be doing this for very long. Still, what an express. Is it comfy? Out here on our worst case scenario Belgian pave, it's actually okay. I think the highest compliment I can pay it is that I can still operate the car even on this horrendous surface, because proper buttons on the steering wheel, not touch sensitive rubbish, quite a friendly touch screen, more buttons for my climate control, buttons for my modes down here. Buttons are easy to use when you're being jostled around. So what if they're not as futuristic as having some kind of Apple-esque swipey surface? Sometimes things just work. What's it like in a corner? Well, it's mature and composed, but I have a feeling we'll learn much, much more if we go a load faster. All right with you? What about if you're late for something? Yep, can confirm that Audi has not turned the Porsche Taycan's world-class chassis into a wallowy blancmange that tastes of fail. This is a fantastically balanced car. You get a real sense of all four tyres being worked. And the body stays so flat, the control, sublime.
The steering is a lot more remote than a Taycan's. but somehow the e-tron GT feels a little bit less heavy than the electric Porsche.
Well, that's a bit of a nitpick. Otherwise, this is not just good to drive for an Audi, it's good to drive as a fast saloon, full stop.
What about the range?
Well, when we took the e-tron GT Quattro off charge this morning at 100%, the clock here said 261 miles, and that pretty much tallies with what we've been getting as we've lived with this car in the Top Gear garage. You can find all the reports about what the e-tron GT is like as a daily on topgear.com, but about 250 miles through spring and summer at least seems to be about the sweet spot. Consumption-wise, it tends to average about 2.9 miles per kilowatt hour. If you're really careful, maybe 3.3 on a long run.
Take it to a racetrack and go flat out to make the most of that impressive handling, and that'll free fall to 1.2 miles per kilowatt hour, which would actually drain the battery in just over 100 miles.
Of course, doing 250 miles to a charge is still a long way short of over 300, as claimed. It's a bit of a pity really. The e-tron GT wants to be this great long distance car, but Porsche or Audi's battery tech just isn't there yet. What's the verdict? So should you buy one? It is tricky. I mean, it is a lot of money. The range isn't up there with Tesla. It's so hard to get away from that. And if you wanted a car that's sort of this shape and size and amount of performance and amount of money, but you wanted it with a Porsche badge on the nose and one here on the steering wheel, then I couldn't really blame you.
But here's the thing. Serious tests of electric cars can get bogged down in the numbers, range, price, charging time, how long the cable is. Sometimes, is it okay just to step back and say, that is a really cool car? The e-tron GT is impossibly cool.
I mean, follow one on the road at night and tell me it doesn't ooze desirability. And then come and sit in here. This is a fantastic cabin in which to spend time. And then you drive it and you find that, okay, R8 aside, let's ignore the R8 for a minute, that exists on its own little planet. But otherwise, this is probably the most enjoyable Audi that they make. And if that sounds like I am damning it slightly with faint praise, then I'm not. I'm saying it gets close to, if not better than, a Taycan. And that means by default, this is one of the best driving electric cars on sale right now. I really did think I was a Porsche Taycan kind of guy, and then I drove this.